Learning a new language can be a long journey. It can also be fun, interesting, and sometimes challenging. For me, learning English was all of these things. Today, I want to share my story of how I learned English. I hope my experience will help you if you are trying to learn English too. I want to keep it simple and easy for everyone to follow, especially if you are still learning English. I grew up in a small town. In my town, most people spoke only one language, which was my native language. I did not know any English when I was a child. In fact, the first time I heard English was on TV. It sounded very strange to me at first. I could not understand anything, but I was curious. The people on TV spoke fast, and their words sounded different from the words I was used to. When I was about 10 years old, my school started offering English classes. I was excited, but also a little scared. Learning a new language seemed hard, and I wasn't sure if I could do it. On the first day of class, my teacher introduced herself in English. She said, "Hello, my name is Mrs. Johnson." At first, I didn't know what she was saying, but soon I learned that hello means the same as hi in my language. In the beginning, we learned very basic things. We learned how to say hello, how to introduce ourselves, and how to ask simple questions like "What is your name?" and "How are you?" I remember practicing these sentences again and again. Repeating them helped me remember. My classmates and I would greet each other in English every morning, even though sometimes we made mistakes. I found the English alphabet very interesting. Some letters were the same as in my native language, but others sounded different. For example, the letter R was hard for me to pronounce at first. I would practice in front of the mirror, trying to say it correctly. Slowly, I started getting better. Learning a new language takes time, so I took small steps every day. I started by learning a few new words each week. My teacher told us that it's important to use the words we learn. So, I started using English words whenever I could. If I learned the word apple, I would try to say it every time I saw an apple. When I learned the word cat, I would talk about my neighbor's cat in English, even if it was only in my head. Listening was also important. I didn't understand much English at first, but I didn't give up. I would watch English shows on TV and listen carefully. Sometimes, I could guess what the people were talking about by their actions. Other times, I had no idea what they were saying. But I kept listening. Like any new skill, learning English came with its challenges. One of the biggest challenges for me was speaking. I was shy and didn't want to make mistakes in front of others. I was afraid that people would laugh at me. But my teacher always told me, it's okay to make mistakes. That's how we learn. So, I tried to be brave. I started speaking English even if I made mistakes. Slowly, my confidence grew. Grammar was another challenge. English grammar is different from the grammar in my language. Sometimes, I would mix up the rules and say things that didn't make sense. For example, I used to say I go to school instead of I went to school. It was confusing at times. But I didn't let it stop me. I practiced and slowly got better. One thing that helped me learn English was finding fun ways to practice. I discovered that learning doesn't always have to be serious or boring. For example, I started playing English games on my computer. The games would teach me new words, and I could practice spelling them. I also started singing along to English songs. At first, I didn't understand the words, but as I listened more, I started recognizing some of them. Reading simple books in English also helped a lot. I found books for children because the language was easier to understand. The pictures helped me understand the story, even if I didn't know all the words. Slowly, I started understanding more and more. Another thing that helped me improve my English was making friends who spoke English. In my town, there weren't many people who spoke English, but I found a few friends online. We would chat in English, and they would help me when I didn't understand something. Talking with real people made a big difference. It was more exciting than just studying from a book. I learned a lot of new phrases and slang that I wouldn't find in a textbook. Sometimes, my English-speaking friends would ask me about my language too. We would teach each other words and phrases, and it became a fun way to learn. I realized that language is not just about learning words and grammar, it's also about connecting with people. As I continued learning, I realized that practice is the key to getting better. The more I practiced, the more confident I became. I started speaking English at home, even when no one understood me. I would describe my day in English or talk to myself while doing chores. This helped me think in English, which made speaking easier. Writing in English was another way I practiced. I started keeping a journal where I wrote about my day in simple English. At first, my sentences were very basic, but over time, they became more complex. Writing helped me organize my thoughts and learn new ways to express myself. As the years passed, my English improved a lot. I was no longer afraid to speak in front of others. In fact, I started helping my classmates who were struggling with English. Teaching others is a great way to learn. When I explained things to my friends, it helped me understand better too. One day, I had to give a presentation in English for school. I was nervous at first, but when I started speaking, I realized how much I had improved. I could speak without stopping to think about every word. It felt amazing to be able to communicate in a different language. My teacher praised me, and that gave me even more confidence. Even though I've come a long way, I know that learning never stops. There are still many words I don't know, and sometimes I make mistakes. But that's okay. Learning a language is a lifelong journey. I continue to read, listen, and speak English every day. I watch English movies, listen to English podcasts, and read English books. I also try to learn about the culture behind the language. Understanding the culture helps me understand the language better. I've realized that there is no need to rush. It's okay to take your time and learn at your own pace. Everyone learns differently, and what works for one person might not work for another. The important thing is to stay curious and keep trying. If you are trying to learn English, I want to share some advice that helped me along the way. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Mistakes are a part of learning. The more you practice, the better you will get. Practice every day. Even if it's just for a few minutes, practicing daily helps you improve. You can read, write, listen, or speak in English. Find fun ways to learn. Learning doesn't have to be boring. Play games, sing songs, or watch movies in English. Use what you learn. Try to use new words and phrases in your daily life. The more you use them, the more you will remember. Be patient. Learning a language takes time. Don't get discouraged if you don't understand everything right away. Keep going, and you will improve. Looking back on my journey, I am proud of how far I've come. Learning English opened many doors for me. It helped me make new friends, learn about different cultures, and even find better job opportunities. But more than that, it gave me confidence. I now know that I can learn anything if I put my mind to it. If you are just starting your English journey, remember that it's okay to start small. Take one step at a time, and soon you will see progress. Every new word you learn is a step forward. Every sentence you speak brings you closer to fluency. Keep practicing, stay curious, and enjoy the journey. As I continue to learn and use English, I am always looking for new ways to challenge myself. Recently, I started watching English news channels. At first, it was difficult to understand everything, but I slowly got better at picking up new words and understanding the context of what was being said. The more I listened, the more comfortable I became with the speed of native speakers. I also joined an online English book club. Every month, we read a book and then discuss it in English. This has helped me improve not only my reading skills, but also my ability to express my thoughts and opinions in English. It's exciting to share ideas with others and hear different perspectives. One thing I've learned is that the more you immerse yourself in a language, the faster you learn. Surround yourself with English as much as possible. Whether it's through music, movies, books, or conversations, the more you engage with the language, the easier it becomes to understand and use it. Learning English has been a rewarding experience for me. It has taught me patience, persistence, and the joy of learning something new. My journey is far from over, and I am excited to continue improving my skills. If you are learning English, remember that every step you take brings you closer to your goal. Keep practicing, stay motivated, and enjoy the process. You are capable of achieving fluency, just like I did. Good luck on your journey, and remember to have fun along the way. Continuing my story from where I left off, I want to go deeper into the different aspects of learning English that I experienced over the years. The journey of learning any language is like a long path with many stops along the way, and each part of the journey taught me something valuable. I also met different people, used various tools, and found ways to stay motivated even when things were tough. Now, let me take you further into my story, adding more details and reflections on how English became such an important part of my life. One of the most important parts of learning English for me was listening. When I was first starting out, listening to English was very hard. People spoke so fast, and it felt like all the words were blended together. I couldn't figure out where one word ended and the next began. This made understanding conversations very difficult. I realized that to improve my listening, I needed to expose myself to more English. So, I made it a habit to listen to English every day. At first, I listened to very simple things, like songs for children or slow, clear conversations. I found some podcasts that were made for beginners, and I would listen to them while doing other things, like cleaning or going for a walk. The more I listened, the easier it became to understand. One day, I tried watching an English movie without subtitles. It was hard, and I didn't understand everything, but I didn't give up. I watched it a second time, and this time I understood more. Each time I listened to English, I felt like my brain was getting used to the sounds, the rhythm, and the flow of the language. The key was not to get frustrated. I knew that understanding would come with time. If I didn't catch a word or a phrase, I would move on and keep listening. Eventually, I began to recognize common phrases, and my brain started to fill in the gaps. This gave me confidence, and I realized that listening is a skill you can train, just like any other. Another major challenge in learning English was speaking. I remember the first time I had to speak English in front of other people. I was so nervous. My heart was pounding, and my hands were sweaty. I kept thinking, what if I make a mistake? What if people laugh at me? These thoughts made me scared to speak, but then, I remembered what my teacher had told me. Making mistakes is part of learning. Don't be afraid. I knew I had to overcome my fear if I wanted to improve. So, I made a promise to myself to speak English whenever I had the chance, even if I made mistakes. At first, I started small. I would practice speaking English at home, just by myself. I would talk about simple things, like what I did that day or what I was going to eat for dinner. Speaking out loud helped me get used to the sound of my own voice in English. Then, I began speaking English with my friends who were also learning. We would practice together, and since we were all learners, we didn't feel embarrassed. The more I practiced, the more confident I became. I started to notice that even if I made mistakes, people still understood me. They didn't laugh at me or judge me. In fact, they would help me if I used the wrong word or grammar. This made me feel more comfortable, and slowly, speaking English became less scary. Eventually, I started speaking English in more public situations. I would order food in English at a restaurant, ask for directions, or even have small conversations with strangers. Each time I spoke, I learned something new, and each time, I felt a little more confident. Vocabulary is the heart of any language. Without words, it's impossible to communicate. In the beginning, I didn't know many English words, and this made it hard to express myself. I wanted to talk about things, but I didn't always know the right words. This is when I realized that learning new vocabulary was very important. I started making a list of new words every day. my goal was to learn at least 5 new words a day. Sometimes, I would choose words that I heard in a conversation or saw in a book. Other times, I would look up words that I needed to express something I wanted to say. For example, one day I wanted to describe my feelings, so I looked up words like excited, nervous, and confident. Learning these words helped me explain how I was feeling. I found that using the words I learned was the best way to remember them. If I learned a new word, I would try to use it in a sentence as soon as possible. For example, if I learned the word delicious, I would say, "This food is delicious." The next time I had a good meal. By using the words in real-life situations, they became part of my vocabulary. I also used flashcards to practice new words. I would write the English word on one side and the meaning or translation on the other side. I would review these cards whenever I had some free time, like while waiting for the bus or before going to bed. This simple technique helped me learn and remember many new words. As I got better at English, I started reading more. At first, I read very simple books, like children's books. The language was easy, and the stories were short. This helped me build confidence in reading. Plus, the pictures in the books helped me understand the story. Even if I didn't know all the words, slowly, I moved on to more challenging books. I remember reading my first novel in English. It was a book for young adults, so the language was not too difficult, but it was longer than anything I had read before. At first, it was hard. I had to look up many words, and sometimes I didn't understand the sentences. But I didn't give up. I kept reading, and as I got deeper into the story, it became easier. By the time I finished the book, I felt proud of myself. It was a big accomplishment for me. Reading helped me improve my vocabulary and grammar. I also learned new ways to express ideas. For example, I saw how characters in the book described their feelings, and I learned new phrases and expressions. Reading also helped me get a better understanding of how sentences are structured in English. The more I read, the more natural English began to feel to me. Now, reading in English is one of my favorite activities. I try to read something in English every day, whether it's a book, a news article, or a blog post. It's a great way to continue learning, even after I reached a higher level of English. Reading has also introduced me to different cultures and perspectives, which is one of the amazing things about learning a new language. Watching movies and TV shows in English was another fun way to learn. At first, I watched with subtitles in my native language. This helped me understand the story, but I also paid attention to the English words. I noticed how the actors used common phrases in everyday conversations, and I tried to remember them. After some time, I switched to watching with English subtitles. This was a bit harder, but it forced me to focus more on the language. I could hear the words and read them at the same time, which helped me improve my listening and reading skills. I learned new words and phrases from the dialogues, and I often paused the show to write them down in my notebook. One of the shows that helped me a lot was a popular sitcom. The language was simple, and the episodes were short, so it didn't feel overwhelming. The humor also made learning fun. I watched some episodes many times, and each time I understood a little more. Watching TV shows like this helped me learn how native speakers talk in casual, everyday situations. Over time, I started watching without any subtitles at all. At first, this was very challenging, but I realized that I didn't need to understand every single word to follow the story. I could still understand the main idea by paying attention to the context, the actions, and the emotions of the characters. This was a big step for me, and it showed me that learning a language is not just about understanding every word, it's about understanding the overall meaning. Writing is another important skill when learning a language. At first, I found writing in English difficult. I didn't know how to organize my thoughts. And I made a lot of mistakes in grammar and spelling. But just like with speaking, I knew that practice would help me improve. I started by writing short sentences, like describing what I did during the day. I kept a small journal where I wrote about simple things, like what I ate for breakfast or what the weather was like. These short writing exercises helped me get used to expressing my thoughts in English. As I got more comfortable, I started writing longer paragraphs and stories. I would write about my dreams, my goals, or something interesting that happened to me. At first, I made a lot of mistakes, but over time, I learned from them. I would look up the correct way to write something if I wasn't sure. And I would ask my friends or teachers for help. One day, I decided to write an essay in English. It was a big challenge, but I wanted to see how much I had learned. Writing the essay took a long time because I wanted to make sure everything was correct. But when I finished, I felt proud. I had written a whole essay in English. This experience showed me how far I had come, and it motivated me to keep practicing. Learning a language is not easy, and there were times when I felt frustrated. Sometimes, I would study for hours and still feel like I wasn't improving. Other times, I would make the same mistakes again and again, and it felt like I would never get it right. But during these tough moments, I reminded myself why I was learning English. For me, English was a way to open new doors. It would help me connect with more people, understand other cultures, and access more opportunities. These thoughts kept me motivated, even when things were hard. I also found it helpful to take small breaks when I felt overwhelmed. Sometimes, stepping away for a little while helped me come back with a fresh perspective. Setting small, achievable goals also kept me motivated. Instead of focusing on how much I still had to learn, I celebrated the small victories. For example, if I learned 5 new words in a week or finished reading a book in English, I felt proud of myself. These small achievements reminded me that I was making progress, even if it was slow. Having supportive friends and teachers also made a big difference. Whenever I felt discouraged, they would remind me how far I had come. They encouraged me to keep going and believed in my ability to succeed. Surrounding myself with positive people made the learning process much more enjoyable. As I reflect on my journey of learning English, I realize that it has been a long and rewarding process. I've come a long way from the days when I didn't know any English, and I'm proud of what I've accomplished. But I also know that learning never really ends. There is always more to learn, more words to discover, and more ways to improve. If you're learning English, my advice is to be patient with yourself. Learning a new language takes time, and it's okay to make mistakes along the way. The important thing is to keep practicing, stay curious, and find joy in the process. Whether it's through reading, writing, speaking, or listening, every small step you take brings you closer to fluency. Remember, everyone's journey is different. What works for one person may not work for another. The key is to find what motivates you and stick with it. With dedication and persistence, you can achieve your goals and become fluent in English, just like I did. Keep going and enjoy the journey. As I became more comfortable with English, one of the biggest turning points was when I started having longer conversations. At first, these conversations were short, and I would often stop because I didn't know how to continue. However, I didn't let that stop me. I knew that the only way to improve was by practicing. So I kept trying. One day, I had a conversation with a tourist who was visiting my town. He didn't speak my native language, so we had to communicate in English. At first, I was nervous, but as we talked, I realized I could understand him quite well. I asked him where he was from, how he liked the town, and what he was planning to do next. We spoke for about 10 minutes, and even though I made a few mistakes, I was proud that I could keep the conversation going. This experience gave me a big confidence boost. I realized that people are usually kind and understanding when you're learning their language. They don't expect you to be perfect. The tourist even thanked me for helping him. And that made me feel really good. After that, I wasn't as scared to start conversations in English, and I tried to speak more with anyone who spoke English. As I improved, I also started using English at work. At my job, we sometimes have international customers who speak English. Before, I would avoid talking to them because I was afraid I wouldn't understand or say something wrong. But after gaining confidence, I decided to give it a try. One day, an English-speaking customer came into the store. I approached him and asked, "How can I help you?" He asked for some information about a product, and I answered him in English. We had a short but successful conversation, and he thanked me for my help. This small interaction made me feel more confident about using English in professional situations. Using English at work became more common after that. Whenever a customer spoke English, I was happy to help. Sometimes it was challenging, especially when people spoke quickly or used words I didn't know. But I learned to ask them to repeat themselves or to slow down. I also started learning new vocabulary related to my job so that I could explain things more clearly. By practicing English at work, I improved my speaking and listening skills. I also learned how to communicate more clearly and professionally. Over time, I became known as the person who could help international customers, and this made me feel proud of my progress. One of the most important lessons I learned during my English journey was that mistakes are part of the process. In the beginning, I was very afraid of making mistakes. I didn't want to say the wrong thing or use incorrect grammar. But over time, I realized that mistakes are not something to be afraid of. In fact, they can be very helpful. For example, I remember one time I was talking to a friend in English. I wanted to say that I had finished reading a book. But instead, I said, I am finished the book. My friend smiled and gently corrected me, saying, you should say, I have finished the book. I felt a little embarrassed, but I also learned something new. After that, I always remembered to use have in those kinds of sentences. Making mistakes helped me learn faster because they showed me where I needed to improve. Instead of getting upset when I made a mistake, I started seeing it as an opportunity to learn. Each time I was corrected, I got a little better. I also became more comfortable asking for help when I didn't know something. Mistakes also helped me learn new grammar rules. Whenever I said something wrong, I would look it up later and try to understand why it was wrong. For example, I learned about verb tenses, prepositions, and sentence structure this way. It took time, but each mistake brought me closer to mastering the language. One of the unexpected benefits of learning English was that it opened the door to new cultures. English is spoken all around the world, and by learning the language, I was able to connect with people from different countries and backgrounds. I started watching documentaries and movies from different parts of the world, all in English. This allowed me to learn about different cultures, traditions, and ways of life. For example, I learned about the lives of people in the UK, the US, Canada, Australia, and many other English-speaking countries. I found it fascinating how the same language could be spoken in so many different places, yet each place had its own unique culture. English also helped me make friends with people from other countries. I joined online forums and language exchange groups where people from all over the world came together to practice English. These groups were very welcoming, and I quickly made friends with people from different continents. We would chat about our lives, share stories, and help each other improve our English. It was amazing to connect with people I never would have met if I didn't know English. Through these friendships, I learned even more about different cultures. My friends would tell me about their holidays, foods, and customs, and I would share mine. It felt like I was traveling the world, even though I was sitting at home. English became a tool not just for communication, but for cultural exchange. In today's world, there are so many resources available for learning languages. I realized that technology could be a powerful tool to help me improve my English. I started using different apps and websites to practice, and it made a big difference in my learning journey. One of the first apps I used was a language learning app that helped me practice vocabulary and grammar. It had games, quizzes, and daily challenges, which made learning fun. Every day, I would spend a few minutes on the app, practicing new words and reviewing old ones. This helped me build my vocabulary quickly, and I found that I could remember words better when I used them in the app. I also used websites where I could chat with native English speakers. These websites connected language learners with people who wanted to help them practice. I would have short conversations with native speakers, and they would correct my mistakes and give me tips. This was a great way to practice real-life conversations without the pressure of being in person. Another tool I found helpful was online courses. There are many free courses available for learning English, and I took advantage of them. Some courses focused on grammar, while others were about speaking, listening, or writing. I found courses that fit my level and goals, and I could study at my own pace. This flexibility made it easier to stay motivated. Finally, I used social media to learn English. I followed English language pages and watched videos in English on platforms like YouTube. Many YouTubers make content specifically for English learners, and I enjoyed watching their lessons and tips. Social media also gave me access to native speakers and language learning communities, where I could ask questions and share my progress. One of the most important things I learned during my English journey was the importance of consistency. Learning a language is not something that happens overnight. It takes time and dedication. At first, I wanted to learn English quickly, but I soon realized that it's a process that requires patience. I made it a habit to study English every day, even if it was just for a few minutes. Some days, I had more time and would spend an hour reading or listening to English. Other days, I was busy and only had time to practice for 10 minutes. But no matter what, I made sure to practice a little bit each day. This consistency made a big difference. Little by little, I started to notice improvements. I could understand more words, speak more fluently, and write more clearly. It didn't happen all at once, but by sticking to my routine, I made steady progress. There were times when I felt tired or frustrated, and I didn't want to study. But I reminded myself of my goals and why I was learning English. I knew that every small step would bring me closer to fluency, and this motivated me to keep going. I also learned that it's okay to take breaks when needed. If I was feeling too tired or overwhelmed, I would take a day off to rest. But the next day, I would get back to my routine. Taking breaks helped me avoid burnout and stay motivated in the long run, as I became more advanced in English. I started to learn idioms and expressions. These are phrases that don't always make sense if you translate them literally, but they are commonly used by native speakers. Learning idioms was fun because they added color and personality to the language. For example, I learned the phrase break the ice, which means to start a conversation in a social situation. I also learned piece of cake, which means something is very easy. These expressions made English more interesting, and I enjoyed using them in conversations. At first, idioms were confusing because they didn't always follow the rules I had learned. But over time, I got better at recognizing them. I would write down new idioms when I heard them and look up their meanings. Then, I would try to use them in sentences to make sure I understood them correctly. Learning idioms also helped me understand English speakers better. Native speakers often use idiomatic expressions in everyday conversations, so knowing these phrases made it easier for me to follow along. It also made my own English sound more natural. Another fun way I learned English was through music. I've always loved listening to music, and I realized that it could be a great tool for learning a language. I started listening to English songs and paying attention to the lyrics. At first, I listened to slow songs with clear lyrics, so it was easier to understand the words. I would listen to the song a few times, then look up the lyrics online to see what I didn't understand. Sometimes, I would write down new words and try to use them in my own sentences. As I became more confident, I started listening to faster songs with more complex lyrics. It was challenging at first, but I enjoyed the process. I would listen carefully, and over time, my listening skills improved. I could understand more and more of the lyrics without having to look them up. Singing along with the songs also helped me with pronunciation. Music has a rhythm, and it helped me practice speaking English in a more natural way. I found that singing along helped me get used to the flow of English, and it made learning more enjoyable. Music also introduced me to different accents and dialects. Depending on where the singer was from, their English might sound different. This helped me become more familiar with various ways English is spoken around the world. At one point in my learning journey, I decided to join a study group. This group was made up of people who, like me, were learning English. We would meet once a week to practice together and help each other improve. The study group was a great experience because it allowed me to learn in a social setting. We would take turns practicing speaking, listening, and reading. Sometimes, we would play language games to make learning more fun. Other times, we would have discussions on different topics, like travel, hobbies, or current events. One of the best things about the study group was that we could give each other feedback. If someone made a mistake, we would correct them in a kind and helpful way. It was a safe space to practice without feeling embarrassed. We also shared tips and resources, like books, websites, or apps that helped us with our learning. The group gave me extra motivation to keep studying because I knew I had people who were counting on me to participate. It also made learning less lonely, and I enjoyed making new friends who shared the same goal. Together, we supported each other and celebrated our progress. Even though I've made a lot of progress in learning English, I know that the journey doesn't end here. Language learning is a lifelong process. There are always new words to learn, new accents to understand, and new skills to develop as I continue to improve. I set new goals for myself. For example, I want to read more advanced books in English, watch more documentaries, and maybe even take a class in English. These goals keep me excited about learning and remind me that there's always room to grow. Looking back, I'm proud of how far I've come. There were times when I felt discouraged, but I never gave up. Learning English has opened so many doors for me, from making new friends to improving my career opportunities. It has also given me a deeper understanding of different cultures and ways of life. For anyone who is learning English, I want to say, keep going. It's okay if it feels difficult at times. It's normal to make mistakes, and it's part of the learning process. Celebrate your small victories and remember that every day you are getting closer to fluency. Most importantly, enjoy the journey. Language learning is not just about reaching a destination, it's about the experiences you have along the way. Keep practicing, stay curious, and have fun. You are capable of achieving your goals, and with dedication and patience, you will get there. As I think about the future, I am excited about all the possibilities that knowing English will bring. English is not just a language, it's a key to a world of opportunities. Whether it's traveling to new countries, meeting people from different cultures, or accessing more information online, English opens doors that I never imagined. One of my dreams is to visit an English-speaking country someday. I would love to travel to places like the UK, the US, Canada, or Australia. Being able to speak English will make these trips so much more enjoyable because I'll be able to communicate with locals, understand the culture better, and explore new places without feeling lost. I also think about how English can help me in my career. Many companies today are looking for employees who speak English because it's the global language of business. Knowing English will give me an advantage and open up more job opportunities. It also means I can communicate with people from different countries and work in international environments. But beyond travel and work, what excites me most is the ability to connect with people. English has already helped me make friends from different parts of the world, and I know that it will continue to do so. Being able to speak with people from different cultures has given me a new perspective on life. It has taught me to be more open-minded and understanding of others. As I look ahead, I know that I will keep learning and growing in my English journey. There is always something new to discover, whether it's a new word, a new expression, or a new way of thinking. I'm excited to see where this journey will take me, and I'm grateful for everything I've learned so far. Learning English has been such a long journey for me. When I first started, I felt like I was standing at the bottom of a mountain, looking up at the top. It seemed so far away, and I wasn't sure how I was ever going to get there. But step by step, I made progress. I didn't rush. I just focused on taking one step at a time, and before I knew it, I had climbed higher than I thought possible. In the beginning, I remember feeling nervous about everything. Every time I tried to speak English, I worried about making mistakes. I thought people might laugh at me or think I wasn't smart. But as time passed, I learned that most people are very understanding when someone is learning a new language. They don't mind if you make mistakes. In fact, they often try to help you, and that's something I appreciate so much. It made me feel more confident to keep practicing. One of the things that really helped me was listening to English every day. At first, I couldn't understand much. I would listen to podcasts or watch TV shows, and most of it went over my head. But little by little, I started to catch more words. I began to recognize common phrases, and slowly, I was able to understand more. I remember the first time I watched a movie in English without subtitles. It was hard, but I understood most of it. That was a big moment for me, and I felt really proud. Another thing that helped was reading in English. In the beginning, I started with simple books, the ones for children. They had easy words and short sentences, which made it easier for me to understand. As I got better, I moved on to more challenging books. I would look up words I didn't know and write them down. Slowly, my vocabulary grew. It wasn't always easy, but reading was a fun way to learn because I could do it at my own pace. I could stop and think about what I was reading, and that made a big difference. Writing in English was a challenge for me, too. I wasn't used to writing in a new language, and I often felt unsure about how to say things. I would write sentences, but they didn't always come out right. Sometimes I would struggle to find the right words, and my grammar wasn't always correct. But I didn't give up. I wrote short paragraphs every day, even if they were just about simple things like what I did that day or how I was feeling. Over time, my writing improved. It wasn't perfect, but it got better with practice. Speaking English was probably the hardest part for me. I was afraid of speaking at first because I didn't want to embarrass myself. I was scared of saying the wrong thing or pronouncing words incorrectly. But I knew that if I wanted to get better, I had to speak. So, I started by talking to myself in English. I would practice saying sentences out loud, just to get used to the sound of my own voice speaking a new language. Slowly, I started to speak with other people. I would have small conversations with friends or classmates, and even though I made mistakes, I kept going. Little by little, I got more comfortable. Listening, reading, writing, and speaking were all important parts of learning English. But the most important thing was staying motivated. There were times when I felt like giving up. There were days when I thought I wasn't improving, no matter how hard I tried. But in those moments, I reminded myself why I started. I wanted to learn English because I knew it would open new doors for me. It would give me more opportunities in life, whether it was for work, travel, or meeting new people. And that kept me going, even when it was tough. One thing I learned along the way is that it's okay to make mistakes. At first, I was very hard on myself whenever I made a mistake. But as I continued learning, I realized that mistakes are a part of the process. Every time I made a mistake, I learned something new. I learned how to say something better or how to use a word correctly. Mistakes helped me grow, and they became less scary the more I made them. I learned to see them as learning opportunities, not failures. Learning English also taught me a lot about patience. I'm not naturally a very patient person, and in the beginning, I wanted to become fluent as quickly as possible. But I soon realized that learning a language takes time. It's not something you can rush. You have to give yourself time to practice, to make mistakes, and to slowly get better. Once I accepted that, the process became less stressful. I stopped comparing myself to others and focused on my own progress. I reminded myself that everyone learns at their own pace, and that helped me stay positive. Over time, I also learned to enjoy the process of learning English. Instead of seeing it as something I had to do, I started to see it as something I wanted to do. I found joy in learning new words, in having conversations with people from different backgrounds, and in understanding English movies or books. learning English became less of a chore and more of a hobby. I started looking forward to my practice sessions, and that made a big difference in how quickly I improved. Music was another great way for me to learn English. I love music, and I realized that listening to English songs was a fun way to practice. I would listen to the lyrics and try to understand the words. If there was a word I didn't know, I would look it up. I would sing along with the songs to practice my pronunciation, and that helped me a lot. Music made learning English more enjoyable, and it didn't feel like studying at all. It was just fun. I also started watching YouTube videos in English. There are so many channels where people talk about all kinds of topics, and I found some that I really enjoyed. Watching these videos helped me with listening skills because I could hear how native speakers talked in a natural way. They didn't always speak slowly or clearly like in language lessons, but that was okay. It was good practice for understanding real conversations. Plus, I learned new words and expressions from these videos, which helped me sound more natural when I spoke. Another thing that helped me improve was talking to native English speakers. At first, I was nervous about speaking with native speakers because I thought they would judge me for my mistakes. But I quickly learned that most people are very kind and patient. They didn't mind that my English wasn't perfect. In fact, they often encouraged me and helped me improve by correcting my mistakes in a helpful way. Talking to native speakers gave me a chance to practice real conversations, and it boosted my confidence a lot. I also realized that it's important to surround yourself with English as much as possible. I changed my phone's language to English. I started writing my to-do lists in English, and I even thought in English sometimes. These small changes helped me get used to the language in my daily life. It wasn't always easy, but it made English feel more natural over time. The more I surrounded myself with the language, the more comfortable I became with it. There were times when I felt stuck, though. There were moments when I didn't feel like I was improving, even though I was practicing regularly. Those moments were frustrating, but I didn't let them stop me. I reminded myself that progress isn't always visible right away. Sometimes, it takes time to see the results of your hard work. I also found that taking a short break helped. After a break, I would come back to my studies feeling refreshed and ready to learn again. One of the most rewarding parts of learning English was being able to help others. As I became more confident, I started helping my friends who were also learning English. I would explain things to them, help them with their pronunciation, or just practice speaking with them. It felt good to be able to share what I had learned, and it also helped reinforce my own knowledge. Teaching others is a great way to learn, and it made me realize how far I had come in my own journey. Looking back, I can see how much I've grown since I first started learning English. It's amazing to think about how far I've come. There were so many times when I doubted myself, but I'm glad I didn't give up. Every challenge I faced helped me become a better learner. I'm still not perfect, and I still have a lot to learn, but I'm proud of the progress I've made. English has become a part of my life now, and I'm excited to continue learning and improving. the journey of learning a language never really ends. There will always be new words to learn, new accents to understand, and new ways to improve. But that's what makes it exciting. I look forward to continuing this journey and seeing where it takes me. I know that with dedication and practice, I will keep getting better. And who knows? Maybe one day, I'll be able to help even more people on their own language learning journeys. Learning English has opened so many doors for me, and I'm excited to see what new opportunities lie ahead. I'm grateful for everything I've learned so far, and I can't wait to keep growing. It's been a long road, but it's been worth every step. And I know the best is yet to come. Thanks for watching this video. Hope you learned something new today. Please don't forget to like, subscribe and press the bell notification so that you never miss on new updates. Have a nice day.